Hey guys, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Gradeup. I'm Shailendra Singh, and today the topic is the economic critique of British imperialism in India. History से topic है modern Indian history से, to be more precise, and as such quite important for your exam because ये जो overall analysis है economic critique का British rule जो इंडिया में था, whether it was good for India economically, whether it was bad for India, this is all we are going to talk about in this, and as such quite important for your exam. And also इकोनॉमिक क्रिटिक का जब रियलाइजेशन हुआ इंडियंस को, इंडियन लीडर्स को फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल के टाइम पे, इनफैक्ट इन द मॉडरेट फेज, when they realized the ill impact of the British rule in the country, it gave rise to economic nationalism, and that further, in fact, kind of reinforced the rising tide of nationalism in the country. Alright, so good afternoon to you once again. Welcome to the class. Shruti, good afternoon. Rohit, a very good afternoon to you. Okay guys, before proceeding forward, as usual, I have one question for you from previous year that was asked by UPSC, and let's see what is the question. There was no independent development of industries in India during British rule because of the four options are given: absence of heavy industries, scarcity of foreign capital, scarcity of natural resources, preferences of the rich to invest in land. So British rule में इंडिपेंडेंट डेवलप ऑफ इंडस्ट्रीज क्यों नहीं हो पाया, क्या रीजन था इसका? अ वेरी सॉर्ट ऑफ मॉडरेट काइंड ऑफ डिफिकल्टी लेवल. ऑलराइट, सो जो इसका आंसर है दैट इज समथिंग विल डिस्कस टुवर्ड्स द एंड, इन एडिशन टू अनदर क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम प्रीवियस ईयर दैट आई बी टेकिंग अप लेटर. ऑलराइट, and by the end of the session I'm sure that you'll be in a position to answer this, those of you who are not very comfortable with this topic. So overview देखते हैं क्या overall ये economic critique है British rule का. Now when the British came to the country, you see, unlike the previous invaders and conquerors, they had a very fundamental kind of impact on the Indian economy. In fact, there was a lot of changes in every possible facet with regard to economic, with regard to the economy of the country, because इतने सारे नई चीजें उन्होंने इंट्रोड्यूस की हैं. We will be talking about those changes, what were the things that they introduced, be it the transportation, be it the land revenue tenures, the new ones that they introduced in the country, or be it the more importantly the fundamental changes in terms of the economic relationship between Great Britain and India. And as a result of these changes that the British introduced in the country, we witness that there was gradual pauperization of India, there was gradual emasculation of the economic power of the Indians. मतलब जो पॉवर्टी का लेवल है इंडिया में वो बढ़ता चला गया विद द पैसेज ऑफ टाइम बिकॉज ऑफ द इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ ऑल दीज न्यू चेंजेस बाय द ब्रिटिश. एंड यू ऑल नो दैट बाय द टाइम ब्रिटिश लेफ्ट द कंट्री, व्हाट वाज द काइंड ऑफ कंडीशन ऑफ द कंट्री इकोनॉमिकली, सोशली, अ वेरी सैड स्टेट ऑफ अफेयर्स वेयर मोस्ट ऑफ द मासेस दे वर पॉवर्टी स्ट्रिकन ऑन द वर्ज ऑफ starvation. So this is actually the kind of overall impact the British rule had on India, on Indian economy. And whatever these changes we'll be talking about in the coming slides, they were introduced with regard to not keeping the interest of Indians in mind, but keeping in mind the interest of the British people. बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली वो लोग यहाँ पे इंडिया में क्यों आएंगे, क्यों वो इंडिया में इतना दूर, हजारों माइल्स की दूरी पे इंडिया है, एंड दैट टू इन सच अ हॉट कंट्री, राइट? दे नेवर लाइक द क्लाइमेट ऑफ इंडिया, isn't it? And that is why later on they established hill stations also. So why would they come to an alien culture, to alien land, alien geography. The reason was economic factor only. This is the very foundation stone. Otherwise, they were not coming here for so-called civilizing mission or white man's burden. वो तो एक बहाना था, एक pretext था. But the fundamental reason, initially as traders, yes, explicitly they came as traders, but later on also, once the British Raj was established, once Crown took over after 1857, the fundamental reason remained the same, to exploit India economically. ये इनका fundamental एक जो motive था इंडिया में आने का, ये यही था. Alright? Alright, Shruti, we will see towards the end what is the right answer. You have said C, alright, okay, we will see. जो British rule है country में, that can be divided into three phases broadly, right? That is, one is a trading phase up to 1757, second is a monopolistic, and third is economic colony. And you see the progression over here, what is happening is gradual strengthening of the tentacles of the British rule over India, and you see India getting poorer by these phases, by the time these phases are over. So धीरे धीरे गरीबी बढ़ रही है, इंडिया की exploitation की intensity बढ़ रही है, from good to bad to worse. And let's see what was the good phase, and then we will see how it changed with the passage of time. जो trading phase था, जो first one, you know that the British came to the country as traders, and जो शुरुआत हुई Captain William Hawkins और उसके बाद Sir Thomas Roe, and subsequently they established all those factories in the country. I'm sure that you already know about it, and if you don't know, please just check it out, right? That's the homework for you. So जब ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी के ट्रेडर्स आने लगे, वो यहाँ पे ट्रेड करने लगे, that was by and large good for the Indian rulers. And why it was good for not only the Indian rulers but also the Indian artisans and handicraftsmen? Because it encouraged Indian manufacturers in the Western world. It opened new markets, new avenues. Because वो इंडिया में you see ट्रेडिंग के लिए आते थे, और यहाँ से जितना भी टेक्सटाइल्स है, जितना सिल्क्स है, या जितना भी स्पाइसेस वगैरह है, I mean to the extent that they could procure, they used to sell in England and other European countries. So let's say this is the map of England. All right, I know it's a very crude map, and this is India. So initially क्या होता था, जब वो traders आए, up to this phase 1757, they exported the goods and articles from India. जिसमें क्या क्या था, जो प्राइम जो इनके एक्सपोर्ट्स से इंडिया से, वेरी ल्यूक्रेटिव स्पाइसेस के क्रेज की वजह से, यू नो द एज ऑफ डिस्कवरी एंड सब्सिक्वेंटली ऑल दोज थिंग्स, स्पाइसेस आइलैंड्स एंड ऑल दिस, साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में भी स्पाइसेस आइलैंड जिनको बोलते हैं. तो स्पाइसेस हैपन टू बी वन ऑफ द मोस्ट प्रेशियस कमोडिटीज ऑफ एक्सपोर्ट्स फ्रॉम इंडिया एंड साउथ ईस्ट एशिया ऑल्सो, राइट? So one is spices, then we have textiles, और textiles में दोनों टाइप के, basically cotton textiles but also silk textiles, and likewise there are other items also, but these are like very important commodities on which they made huge truckloads of profit in Britain. और वहां से इंडिया में क्या आता था, basically they didn't have much to offer to us because India was a manufacturing powerhouse in those days. We had the tradition and legacy, बहुत पुराना legacy था, centuries का, especially to you know make those fine textiles, the fine muslins of Decca, ढाका जिसको आज की डेट में नाम है, British used to call it Decca, मुर्शिदाबाद के silks, Calicut के calicos, South India के, so all these fine textiles they used to be exported from India. वहां से उनके पास देने को हमारे लिए ज्यादा कुछ था नहीं. They had only, or rather mostly, gold and silver to bring into India, and this is why the Indian rulers, they encouraged these European traders. अगर उनको पता होता ये किस लिए आ रहे हैं यहाँ पे, इनका रियल इंटेंट, या जिस तरीके से चीजें बाद में पैन आउट हुई, so probably they would have expelled them, but उनको realize नहीं हुआ इस time तक, and they thought that probably these people are here for encouraging our trade, the trade of our people are flourishing, the manufacturing is flourishing, they are opening new markets in Europe, so that's good, that is why they encouraged it. So this was, you see, a good phase in terms of the economic trade relations between India and Britain, or the Western world rather. ये फेज रहा अप टू 1757 तक. दूसरा फेज है which is bad phase, and it happened from 1757 onwards. अब आप मुझे बताइए 1757 में क्या हुआ? What is the significance of this landmark year 1757? And I'd be very glad if you can tell me the significance of 1765 also. Because the picture that I have put over here, this is not related to 1757. Yes, indeed it is important, but 1765 is also equally important, or rather more important. So let me see if you can answer that. 1757 में, a very landmark year in the history of the country, and 1764 and 65 as well. Alright, let me tell you what is it. Now 1757 में guys, Battle of Plassey, the famous Battle of Plassey that took place. And when the Battle of Plassey took place, actually it was no battle, because मीर जाफर की जो आर्मी थी उसने तो वैसे ही बिट्रे कर दिया था सिराजुद्दौला को, राइट? उसके बाद से ब्रिटिश का इनडायरेक्ट पॉलिटिकल कंट्रोल स्टैब्लिश हो गया ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी का ओवर बंगाल. एंड आफ्टर दिस बैटल ऑफ बक्सर 1764 में, you know, in 1765 we had this treaty of इलाहाबाद. और जो ये पिक्चर मैंने यहां पे लगाया है, ये ट्रीटी ऑफ इलाहाबाद का ही है, जिसमें यू कैन सी दैट यहां पे जो मुगल एम्परर हैं शाह आलम टू, he is handing over this Diwani of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha to Lord Clive or Robert Clive. Clive is considered as the founder of the British rule in India, right? So Clive को दीवानी हैंड ओवर कर दी, रिसोर्सेज कंपनी को हैंड ओवर कर दिए, रिच रिसोर्सेज, द रिचेस्ट प्रोविंस इन द होल ऑफ सब कॉन्टिनेंट. यू कैन इमेजिन कितना ज्यादा ब्रिटिश को ऑल ऑफ अ सडन इट वाज सच अ dramatic jump in their fortunes. They would have never even imagined ever before that. They came as just petty traders, one of the many traders in the country, and ended up being the overlords of Bengal now, and eventually becoming the overlords of Hindustan. So this is actually the landmark year. These two landmark years are there, but generally 1757 ही बोला जाता है. अब क्या हुआ? Politically also they control now, not only as Diwans of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha, but also indirectly they have the puppet who is the Nawab of Bengal. They are controlling that puppet politically, and the masters, the real masters, political masters, are the British East India Company. And once they control the resources, now they don't have to bringing that. मैंने बताया था ना थोड़ी देर पहले कि वहां से गोल्ड और सिल्वर लेके आ रहे थे, उनको बहुत बड़ा रिलीफ मिल गया. गोल्ड और सिल्वर लाने की नो जरूरत, राइट? इंडिया के जो बंगाल के रिसोर्सेज हैं, एंड यू कैन इमेजिन रिसोर्स ऑफ बंगाल, सच अ फर्टाइल प्रोविंस, एंड बंगाल इन दोज डेज इज नॉट वेस्ट बंगाल ऑफ टुडे, सच अ ह्यूज टेरिटरी, अ कंट्री इन इटसेल्फ. बांग्लादेश ऑफ टुडे, देन वेस्ट बंगाल, बिहार, झारखंड, पार्ट्स ऑफ ओडिशा एंड असम ऑल्सो. सो यू कैन इमेजिन व्हाट अ लार्ज टेरिटरी इट वाज, अ फर्टाइल टेरिटरी. वहां के जो रेवेन्यूज हैं उसी से चीजें परचेज किया और उनको एक्सपोर्ट कर दिया ब्रिटेन में और वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज में, एंड दे मेड ह्यूज प्रॉफिट्स ऑन दैट. एंड व्हाई इट वाज बैड? एक्चुअली इट शुड हैव बीन गुड, क्योंकि इन्होंने एनकरेज एक तरीके से अल्टीमेटली एक्सपोर्ट ही कर रहे हैं, इंडियन प्रोडक्ट्स ही एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं. बट इट वाज सॉर्ट ऑफ बैड फॉर द इंडियन वीवर्स एंड इंडियन हैंडीक्राफ्टमैन, द आर्टिसंस, बिकॉज उन लोगों को जो रॉ मटेरियल की सप्लाई है ये ब्रिटिश कंट्रोल किया करते थे, ईस्ट इंडिया कंट्रोल करती थी, एंड दे वर कंपेल्ड टू परचेज दोज रॉ मटेरियल, स्पेशली कॉटन, एट एन एक्सपेंसिव प्राइस, हायर देन द रियल प्राइस वॉज जो रॉ मटेरियल का रहा होगा उससे ज्यादा इन्फ्लेट करके उनको कंपेल करते थे कि आप ये रॉ मटेरियल खरीदो. एंड व्हेन दे यूज्ड टू टर्न दैट रॉ मटेरियल इनटू फिनिश्ड प्रोडक्ट्स, they were compelled to sell them cheap. नॉर्मल मार्केट प्राइस से उसके कम जो दाम है उस पर ये खरीदा करते थे. So what was happening? That the Indian artisans and weavers, they were net losers. But still it is considered bad, not worse, because अभी भी इंडिया से एक्सपोर्ट हो रही हैं चीजें. Still the textiles are being exported, still the silks are being exported, spices and all those things. Now comes the third phase, which is the economic colony phase, the worst phase. And that worst phase lasted, unfortunately, until the independence of country in 1947. And what is this worst phase? Let's see. But before that, again, I will ask you a question. Again, I will ask you a question. I have a question for you. 1813 में ऐसा क्या हो गया कि यहाँ पे 1813 मैंने mention किया हुआ है? Because now you know what is the significance of this landmark year 1757. 1813 में क्या significant change हुआ that we have mentioned it as an epoch making event, जहां से चीजें टर्न हो जाती हैं for the worst, for the economic health of the country. Any guesses? अगर आप श्योर नहीं हो देन ऑल्सो यू कैन टाइप इन द आंसर्स, सो नो वरीज एज सच, बिकॉज यहां पे कोई एग्जाम तो हो नहीं रहा, isn't it? So even if you're wrong, I will appreciate that you have kind of participated in the class. Yes, of course, Anu, this is fantastic. Fantastic. So yes, I'm receiving the answers now, and I'm quite glad that not only you have kind of chipped in, you are also correct. So Anu, you are right, and GSS UPSC, all right, you haven't mentioned your name over here. Yes, you are also correct. That is Charter Act of 1813. It was introduced, it was legislated in the Parliament of Britain. And why that Charter Act of 1813 was legislated? Because इस टाइम पे ब्रिटेन में इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन अपनी पीक पे था. इससे पहले का जो फेज था और ये वाला जो फेज है, इसमें क्या हो रहा था, इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन ब्रिटेन में मोमेंटम गैदर कर रहा था. यू नो, इट बिगैन इन 1750s इन ब्रिटेन, एंड देयर वाज दिस राइजिंग क्लास ऑफ मैन्युफैक्चरर्स, राइजिंग क्लास ऑफ कैपिटलिस्ट एंड इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट who were growing in numbers because industrial revolution, you know, first began in Britain, and England had a lead vis-a-vis other countries, and there was a lot of manufactures that were being produced by virtue of the steam power and all the latest inventions that they made during this time. And those industrialists and capitalists and manufacturers, they realized that they are not getting in anything out of this monopoly of the East India Company over trade in eastern part of the world. उनको कुछ नहीं मिल रहा है इससे. ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी को बेनिफिट हो रहा है, बट उनको तो कोई बेनिफिट नहीं हो रहा. ये एक्सपोर्टर्स हैं, इंपोर्टर्स नहीं हैं. इंपोर्टर्स होंगे रॉ मटेरियल के, बट फिनिश्ड प्रोडक्ट्स का उनको नुकसान है. दे वांट टू पुश देयर ओन फिनिश्ड प्रोडक्ट्स रादर देन हैव द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ ब्रिटेन एंड द पीपल ऑफ ब्रिटेन बाय दोज फिनिश्ड प्रोडक्ट्स फ्रॉम इंडिया. एंड दैट इज व्हाई दे लॉबीड विद द ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट, विद द एमपीज एंड विद द पीपल ऑफ ब्रिटेन दैट प्लीज हमको अलाउ कीजिए ट्रेड करना इंडिया में भी. व्हाई शुड ओनली वन कंपनी हैव द मोनोपोली ओवर ट्रेड इन इंडिया? And they brought this tremendous pressure on the British Parliament, and they launched a scathing attack with regard to the British East India Company policies in India, and they called them exploiters of Indian people. और भी कई सारी चीजें ऐसा बोला कि इंडिया में ये लोग उनको प्लंडर कर रहे हैं, इस तरीके से कर रहे हैं. Basically, this is hypocrisy. They were not well-wishers of Indians, but they also wanted to have a share in that big pie, lucrative pie of trade in India. And as a result, finally, this was the background I was mentioning about. I was discussing background in which the Charter Act of 1813, it was legislated by the British Parliament, as per which the monopoly of East India Company with regard to trade in India, that is done away with, except for trade in tea and trade with China. ये exception था, but जो monopoly थी trade की वो that is gone, and now begins the new phase, which is the inundation of India or the flooding of India with the cheap goods and manufactures from Britain. तो जो पहला वाला जो flow देखा हमने, now that has got reversed. Now that flow has got reversed. And what is the flow now? This is the flow of manufactures. This is the flow of exports. Now the factories of England, like the factories in Lancashire, Manchester, etc., वहाँ से जो products हैं, जो textiles हैं या बाकी जो manufacturers हैं, वहाँ से produce कर रहे हैं in masses, in bulk, and they are pushing it into India. So यहाँ से अभी flow reverse हो गया, and India से अभी क्या जा रहा है? Out of this is going the revenues या जो money है. So now money is flowing out of India and the goods are being pushed into India, which is leading to what? Which is leading to a lot of bad impact on the economy of the country. Worse of it, because now India has been turned into an economic colony. इससे पहले export होता था, अब import करना पड़ रहा है. और export करते हैं हम, क्या करते हैं इस टाइम पे? Raw materials. रॉ मटेरियल्स, बिकॉज इंग्लैंड में तो कोई कॉटन वगैरह का प्रोडक्शन होता नहीं था. सो यहां से रॉ मटेरियल जाता था, वहां पे फैक्ट्रीज में फिनिश गुड्स उसको प्रिपेयर करते थे, मैन्युफैक्चर करते थे, एंड दैट यूज्ड टू बी डंप्ड इनटू द कंट्री. व्हाट अ ब्रिलियंट मास्टर स्ट्रोक, इजंट इट, फॉर द ब्रिटिश. सो दिस इज द फंडामेंटल चेंज दैट वाज ब्रॉट अबाउट आफ्टर 1813. एंड इंडियन जो आर्टिसंस थे, जो वीवर्स थे, from net producers they became net consumers, because उनका they couldn't compete with the cheap manufacturers of Britain, and they did not have any alternatives also. उसके अलावा क्या करेंगे? जो traditionally occupation है उनका practice कर रहे हैं सैकड़ों साल से. कोई इंडिया में कोई इंडस्ट्रीज तो थी, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडस्ट्रीज, जो वो छोड़ के कुछ और कर लेंगे. They had to flock to agriculture. That led to increasing pressure on the agriculture of India. Already British ने agriculture से related policies introduce कर दी थी, that was bad, and this became even worse now. So you can see that industrially India को कैसे impact किया. It was sort of de-industrialization that the British did in the country. In the first phase of the British rule, उसके बाद से industrialization हुआ, but we will see what sort of industrialization it was. Again, self-centric industrialization of India, selective industrialization of India to suit British aims and goals and British rule in the country. Yes, Anu, end of monopoly except China trade and tea trade. Of course, you are right, absolutely. Yes, absolutely, you are right. Disguised employment बढ़ा, फैमिन्स आए, पॉवर्टी बढ़ी, ये सारी चीजें बैक इम्पैक्ट हुआ, लैंड का और ज्यादा फ्रैगमेंटेशन हुआ, प्रेशर बढ़ गया, जितने टेनेंट से और ज्यादा बढ़ गए टेनेंट्री का. सो वो सारी चीजें, एक्सप्लॉइटेशन बहुत ज्यादा हो गई. चीजें बोलते हैं ना, बद से बदतर हो जाना, टर्निंग फ्रॉम बैड टू वर्स. दिस हैपेंड ड्यूरिंग दिस टाइम. एंड व्हाट फर्दर एक्सेलरेटेड दिस एंटायर प्रोसेस, दिस चेन ऑफ इवेंट्स ऑफ exploitation, this vicious cycle of exploitation, it was the promotion of transport and communication actively by the British. Now this wasn't very actively. और आपको अगर लगे कि ये एक्टिवली बहुत अच्छी बात है, अगर ट्रेन्स वगैरह इंट्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं, पोस्टेज स्टैम्प्स हो गए, टेलीग्राफ लाइन्स हैं, then that was again for British interests only. British had their own goal in mind to accelerate this economic exploitation of the country. और वो कैसे? क्योंकि उस टाइम पे इंडिया में इससे पहले जो ट्रांसपोर्टेशन के मीन्स हुआ करते थे, कम्युनिकेशन के मीन्स हुआ करते थे, काफी पुअर हुआ करते थे बाय एंड लार्ज. एंड ब्रिटिश ने रेलवे लाइंस वगैरह बिछाना स्टार्ट कर दिया. यू नो व्हेन द फर्स्ट रेलवे लाइन वाज एस्टैब्लिश्ड, कैन यू टेल मी? ये आपको शायद पता होगा, बॉम्बे टू थाना 1853 में. बट हु वाज द गवर्नर जनरल ऑफ द कंट्री? दिस इज इंपॉर्टेंट. because a lot of developments are associated with that Governor General, who is like quite an interesting character in himself. So who was the Governor General? Tell me very quickly in the comment box. All right. So till then, what is it that transportation and communication ka mainly railways? Now you see, not long after railways were introduced in Britain, it was also introduced in India. And why this hurry? Why this haste? इतना क्यों enthusiasm था ब्रिटिश को कि इतनी जल्दी इंडिया में भी इंट्रोड्यूस कर दें? क्योंकि इनको पोर्ट्स हैं यहाँ पे. यू सी पोर्ट ऑफ बॉम्बे, यहाँ पे मद्रास हो गया, देन वी हैव कैलकाटा समवेयर ओवर हियर. यहाँ से इन्होंने रेलवे लाइंस को कनेक्ट कर दी हिंटरलैंड से, सो दैट द रॉ मटेरियल्स कुड बी प्रोक्योर्ड फ्रॉम द हिंटरलैंड्स ऑफ द कंट्री, फ्रॉम द जो अंदर के जो एरियाज हैं, इंटरनल रिमोट पार्ट्स ऑफ द कंट्री, दे कुड बी काइंड ऑफ ब्रॉट इन टू दोज पोर्ट्स. और यहाँ से कहाँ एक्सपोर्ट करेंगे? ब्रिटेन को. सो रॉ मटेरियल वहां से अंदर से खींच कर लाए पोर्ट्स तक, और वहां से इंग्लैंड को ट्रांसफर कर दिया रॉ मटेरियल. और ब्रिटेन से क्या, उनको मैन्युफैक्चर करके फिनिश प्रोडक्ट से देन इट इज पुश्ड बैक थ्रू दोज पोर्ट्स, वेरी पोर्ट्स अगेन इनटू द कंट्री थ्रू दोज वेरी रेल्स एज फिनिश प्रोडक्ट्स, so that we have this vast market, they have this vast market of India in front of them, because naturally the population of Britain was very small and they needed markets, big markets, and India in those days, even in those days, had a large population. So you see, what was the purpose of the introduction of these means of transportation and communication? That was to accelerate this process, that was to expedite the process of economic exploitation of the country, to feed the factories of Britain with the raw materials, and in return to dump whatever they could produce, the manufacturers, into India and have this vast profit from India. So उनका इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन को कौन फाइनेंस कर रहा है, कौन सपोर्ट कर रहा है? इंडिया, isn't it? A very large part is done by India. So this is actually the kind of state of affairs that we witnessed during the British phase. All right, so the question I had asked you, let me see how many of you have answered it. Yes, sure, Anu, absolutely fantastic. You're doing quite well today. Yes, it was Lord Dalhousie. Lord Dalhousie was the Governor General of India during this time. Yes, GSS Arasi UPSC. Yes, you are also correct. So this is Lord Dalhousie, and you should know what all events are associated during the tenure of Lord Dalhousie, because he is like one of those characters, you like him, you dislike him, you love him, you hate him, but you have to talk about him, you can't ignore him, because of the very important developments, other developments apart from this, that took place during his time, including annexation of Awadh and doctrine of lapse. You see, annexation of Punjab, isn't it? All right, so let's move to another character. And okay, so एक गवर्नर जनरल की बात की. Can you identify this person over here? Can you identify this person? And to give you a hint, he is not some clerk or some soldier of the East India Company. He is the Governor General of Bengal. Mind you, I said Governor General of Bengal, not Governor General of India. So who is this person? Who could be this person? And I know this is a kind of sort of tough question, because probably you might not be familiar with his face, with his portrait, but still, nonetheless, yes, fantastic. That's fantastic. I'm impressed. Anu, absolutely, he is Lord Cornwallis. So Lord Cornwallis is the person over here, and he introduced this permanent settlement system in Bengal. परमानेंट सेटलमेंट सिस्टम, जिसको जमींदारी सिस्टम भी बोलते हैं, बंगाल में इंट्रोड्यूस किया. बंगाल मीन्स बंगाल, बिहार एंड ओडिशा. यहाँ पे इंट्रोड्यूस किया परमानेंट सेटलमेंट सिस्टम. एंड लेटर ऑन, आफ्टर हिम, इन द tenure of subsequent governor generals, this Rayatwari system and subsequently Meherwadi systems were also introduced. Now when these new land tenure systems or land revenue systems were established, they were kind of very different from what was practiced before. इससे पहले स्पेशली जो परमानेंट सेटलमेंट सिस्टम का अगर देखा जाए, तो यहाँ पे जो इंटरमीडिएट क्लास है, दैट इज द जमींदार्स, दे वर नॉट द ओनर्स ऑफ द लैंड. अब ये ओनर्स बन गए, एंड नाउ दैट दे आर ओनर्स ऑफ द लैंड, द ब्रिटिश आर हैप्पी विद वट एवर शेयर द डिमांड फ्रॉम द लैंडलॉर्ड्स, जमींदार्स, एंड द पेजेंट्री इज लेफ्ट टू द mercy of those zamindars who exploited the peasants very, very badly, evicted them frequently. In the Rayatwari areas, there was a lot of revenue demand that the British placed. Now there are no zamindar. जो बीच का जो tier है, जैसे permanent में था, ये हो गए top पे British. Then we have the zamindars and the peasants. तो यहाँ पे तो जमींदार एक layer था, बंगाल में जो इंट्रोड्यूस किया परमानेंट सेटलमेंट सिस्टम में. बट रैयतवाड़ी जो सिस्टम है, जो डेक्कन और प्रेसिडेंसी ऑफ मद्रास में इंट्रोड्यूस किया, और किसके टेन्योर में किया, ये आपके लिए होमवर्क है. जमींदारी जो जमींदार का क्लास है, दैट इज नॉट देयर. इट इज ओनली टू टीयर्ड स्ट्रक्चर, दैट इज द ब्रिटिश एंड द पेजेंट. सो दिस बीइंग द अल्टीमेट जमींदार एंड द पेजेंट इज डायरेक्टली हैविंग टू पे लैंड रेवेन्यूज टू द ब्रिटिश. But यहाँ पे भी it was no good for the peasant because the land revenue demand was very high. इतना ज़्यादा land revenue demand कर देते थे कि बेचारे peasants को money lenders का सहारा लेना पड़ता था, और money lenders धांधलेबाजी करके through fraudulent means, through forging of those deeds, he used to trap this peasant, the illiterate peasant of the country, into this vicious cycle of debt. और अल्टीमेटली वो जो जमीन था, अगर उसका जो था जमीन जो भी रहता था इन दिस रैयतवाड़ी सिस्टम, wherein he was considered as the owner of land, he had to make this sacrifice of his land. जमीन को जो लोकल मनी लेंडर था वो हड़प कर लिया करता था. एंड देयर वाज नो एग्जेम्पशन ऑल्सो. अगर क्रॉप फेल भी हो जाता है, आपको जो टैक्स है वो देना ही पड़ेगा ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट को. दे आर नॉट बॉदर्ड वेयर देयर इज फैमिन, वेदर देयर इज ड्राउट है, फ्लड है, XYZ, नेचुरल कोई कैलामिटी आ गया, इनको अपना टाइमली इनको लगाना चाहिए. सो दिस इज एक्चुअली द न्यू सिस्टम दैट वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड बाय द ब्रिटिश, क्वाइट डिफरेंट फ्रॉम व्हाट वाज ऑलरेडी देयर इन द ट्रेडिशनल इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ द कंट्री, which brought ruin to the peasantry of the country, the increasing exploitation of the peasantry, and on top of that you remember हमने प्रीवियस स्लाइड में बात किया कि किस तरीके से वहां पे जो आर्टिसंस है इंडिया में और जो वीवर्स वगैरह हैं, they were also gradually made to abandon their traditional occupations and to flock to agriculture, which is leading to what? Increased human pressure on the limited agricultural resources of the country, which further led to the pauperization of peasantry in the country. और ज़्यादा वो गरीब होते गए. Let's talk about another facet now, modern industrial development की बात करते हैं. So far we have basically talked about deindustrialization of India. डीइंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन एज इन जो भी प्रोटो इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन थी, जो कॉटेज इंडस्ट्रीज थी और जो घर पे जो इंडस्ट्रीज वगैरह थी जो एक्सपोर्ट किया करती थी, नाउ दे हैव शट देयर शॉप्स एंड दे बिकम नेट कंज्यूमर्स ऑफ द ब्रिटिश गुड्स. देन वी हैव ऑल्सो टॉक्ड अबाउट द इम्पैक्ट ऑन पेजेंट्री. नाउ लेट्स टॉक अबाउट दिस अनदर फिनोमिनन दैट happened during the British time from 1850s onwards, that is modern industrial development. Introduction of modern industries, the factory system in the country. So this is let's talk about it, this modern industrial development. Yes, that's fantastic, Anu. Yes, you are quite active in the class. Yes, I am glad that you know this by Thomas Munro and Captain Reed. So Rayatwari system, it was introduced by Thomas Munro, who was the governor of Madras Presidency, and Captain Reed. So that's fantastic. So modern industrial development also began with the British. And don't be misled by the assumption when I say this, that it happened with British, that it was good for India. Again, it was self-serving for the British. The British aims and goals were kept in mind. And there was selective industrialization of the country depending upon what suited the British interest, what suited the interest of the mother country far away in Britain. And a very limited beginning was made in the second half of the 19th century in textile industry, especially cotton textile and jute industry. So the first cotton textile mill 1853 में established हुई बॉम्बे में, C.N. दावर ने establish किया था, was a Parsi gentleman. And likewise in jute का भी 1855 में start हो गया था, and these industries actually witnessed rapid growth. So there is no denying about this fact. These two industries in fact gave the employment to the majority of the industrial workers in India during this time, during the British time also, right up to independence. And apart from that, we also witnessed the growth of plantation industries like indigo revolt के बारे में शायद आपने पढ़ा होगा, right? Indigo revolt of 1859-1860. चंपारण में भी ऐसा ही कुछ इशू था जिसलिए गांधी जी ने इंटरवीन किया था. सो इंडिगो हो गया, कॉफी हो गया, टी हो गया, तो ये प्लांटेशन इंडस्ट्रीज भी इन्होंने इस चीज की शुरुआत की. बट ऑल दीज इंडस्ट्रीज, मॉडर्न इंडस्ट्रीज, अगेन एज आई सेड, they were to serve the British interest. They were either European owned by the British or controlled by the British capital. Because इस चीज के लिए कैपिटल चाहिए होता है अगर इंडस्ट्रीज को सेटअप करना है आपने. So you require capital, right? And the British were very often in a more favorable position to have those surpluses invested and reinvested in India, ताकि उनको ब्रिटेन में जो उनका सरप्लस कैपिटल है वो इंडिया में इन्वेस्ट करके अच्छे रिटर्न्स मिले. एंड ऑन द अदर हैंड जो इंडिया में इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट थे, कैपिटलिस्ट थे, उनको एक्टिवली डिस्करेज किया जाता था टू ओपन अप सच न्यू मॉडर्न एंटरप्राइजेस. बहुत एक कॉन्शियस लेवल पे, एक बहुत सिस्टेमिक लेवल पे डिस्करेज किया जाता था. एंड एज आई सेड दैट दीज इंडस्ट्रीज एक्चुअली दे वर वेरी वेरी लिमिटेड टू जस्ट अ फ्यू सेक्टर्स. ऐसा नहीं है कि हर चीज में वो ब्रिटिश ने एनकरेज किया. एंड यू सी देयर वाज ऑलमोस्ट कंप्लीट एब्सेंस ऑफ हेवी और बेसिक इंडस्ट्रीज का, तो ऑलमोस्ट कंप्लीट एब्सेंस था, जिसमें आयरन स्टील हो गया, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग का जो मशीनरी का प्रोडक्शन है. बिकॉज ये जो चीजें हैं उनको पता था कि इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन सिर्फ इंग्लैंड में ही होना चाहिए, उनकी मोनोपोली होनी चाहिए. बिकॉज इफ इंडियंस ऑल्सो स्टार्ट मेकिंग दोज मशीनरीज एंड इंडिया से ही ये प्रोडक्शन होने लगी हर चीज का, तो उनके जो गुड्स हैं वो कौन खरीदेगा, मार्केट कैसे बनेगा इंडिया, इफ इंडिया इटसेल्फ प्रोड्यूसेस ऑल दोज थिंग्स. दैट इज व्हाई एट अ वेरी कॉन्शियस लेवल देयर वाज ऑलमोस्ट कंप्लीट एब्सेंस ऑफ आयरन एंड स्टील प्लांट्स एंड ऑल्सो द मशीनरीज दैट वाज प्रोड्यूस. वो सारा इंग्लैंड ही, उसका मोनोपोली इंग्लैंड पे ही, इंग्लैंड के पास ही था. एंड वट एवर ट्रेड वॉज ऑल्सो देयर, you see it was one sided free trade. so इंग्लैंड से इंडिया में ड्यूटी फ्री जो गुड्स हैं वो आएंगे, यहाँ के जो कस्टम ड्यूटी नहीं लगेगा, उसमें ऑलमोस्ट नो इंपोर्ट ड्यूटीज. लेकिन इंडिया से जाएगा जो ब्रिटेन में थोड़ा बहुत जो भी एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, इट वॉज इम्पोज्ड विद दीज ह्यूज इंपोर्ट टैरिफ्स टू एक्टिवली डिस्करेज द इंडियन एक्सपोर्ट्स टू ब्रिटेन. So you see one-sided free trade. That is why it is called one-sided free trade. So isn't it this systemic, very very deliberate kind of strategy to make sure that the Indian industries and the Indian people lose out at every step of the way? हर तरीके से Indians are the net losers. So यहाँ से तो duty free export आप कर रहे हो, but if you believe in this free trade, why not this free trade in your own country? Why are you imposing such huge tariffs on Indian goods till the time they could compete? And once upon a time, the time came that Indian manufacturers, they were no more in a position to compete also. So it died down. Deindustrialization of the country took place. Then there was जो भी industrial development हुआ country में, it was not to suggest that it was just uniform industrial development. There were just islands of such pockets, such industrial areas. Chiefly Calcutta हो गया, Bombay हो गया, Madras हो गया. So there were very few these pockets wherein this industrial development could take place. and as such bulk, a very large part of India that remained rural in character, agrarian in character. खेती ही सहारा है लोगों का. अगर लोगों के पास जॉब्स होती, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग जॉब्स, तो एक्टिवली ब्रिटिश एनकरेज करते, कोई और इंडियन गवर्नमेंट होती एक्टिवली एनकरेज करती इंडियन इंडस्ट्रीज को. यहाँ पे भी इंडिया में भी टैरिफ्स इंपोज करती फॉरेन गुड्स के ऊपर, और बड़े नए नए मार्केट्स अगर देखते और इंडिया का जो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सीन है उसको प्रमोट करते, देन दे वुड हैव बीन अपॉर्चुनिटीज फॉर द एक्सेस इंडियन पीपल हु वर एंगेज्ड इन एग्रीकल्चर. सो एक्सेस वो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में एब्जॉर्ब कर लेते. सो दैट वुड हैव लेड टू दिस एक जो बोलते हैं वर्चुअस साइकिल जिसको बोलते हैं, दैट वन गुड थिंग लीड्स टू अनदर. ये एक जो गुड फील गुड फैक्टर है इकोनॉमी का, जो डेवलपमेंट है चारों तरफ से, जो एक जो प्रोस्पेरिटी बढ़ती है, दैट वुड हैव टेकन प्लेस अगर इंडियन गवर्नमेंट होती. दे वुड हैव encourage the interests of Indian industries, of Indian capitalists and Indian workers. But that was not to be, and it is this systemic discrimination that led to what? The gradual this downslide of the Indian masses in terms of their economic prosperity. दो classes का rise किया by the way as a byproduct. One is the capitalist class and the second is the working class, and both of them, they played a very important role in the freedom struggle. So these two classes actually came into prominence, came into origin for the first time as a result of this industrialization, जो basic level का है, not a very big sort of industrialization. And both of them, they suffered under the colonial rule. Capitalists भी suffer कर रहे थे, उनके साथ discrimination होता था in terms of setting up enterprises and policies, and जो workers भी थे, naturally they also were not looked after well by the British capitalists, क्योंकि उनका जो purpose था that was to exploit the labor in the country, and as such both of them, they played their own part in the freedom struggle in the country. Now, a very important theme with regard to all this that we have talked about so far is manifested in the drain of wealth that came to the fore in the 1860s for the first time. Because until 1857, you see, the educated middle class of the country, it could not realize that the British are exploiting the country. And as such, you would remember guys, 1857 के रिवोल्ट के टाइम पे जो एजुकेटेड मिडिल क्लास है उन्होंने ब्रिटिश को सपोर्ट किया. बट आफ्टर दैट दे रियलाइज दैट एक्चुअली ये तो कुछ अलग ही, हमको लगा कि यहाँ पे तो इंडिया के भले के लिए ब्रिटिश आए हैं, एज दे आर क्लेमिंग, दे क्लेम दैट दे हैव इंट्रोड्यूस्ड सोशल रिफॉर्म्स और मॉडर्नाइजेशन ऑफ द कंट्री, न्यू मीन्स ऑफ ट्रांसपोर्टेशन, बट दे रियलाइज फ्रॉम 1860s दैट एक्चुअली इट्स नॉट सो, दिस इज जस्ट अ फार्स. ये सिर्फ एक प्रिटेंड कर रहे हैं, एक्चुअल जो पर्पस है कुछ और है, दैट इज द इंडियन एक्सप्लॉयटेशन. एंड इट वॉज दिस थिंग दैट वॉज ब्रॉट फोर्थ फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम. In fact, one of the pioneers of this sort of exposing of the British rule in the country, that was done by the grand old man of India, Dadabhai Nauroji, whose picture you can see here, a very respected leader from the freedom struggle from the moderate phase. And he gave this drain of wealth theory for the first time in 1867 in his paper called England's debt to India. ये उन्होंने पेपर लिखा 1867 में फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम, England's debt to India, and he exposed the real character of the British rule in the country, because British in those times used to boast that we are here for India's good, for the good of the Indians, for the good governance of Indians. We are not here for our self-interest, right? So इन्होंने expose किया उस चीज को, वो जो फार्स है, जो hypocrisy थी, through his work, which was later made a part of his book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. As such, please remember किसने ये लिखा था. ये जो book है poverty and un-British rule in India, and किसने ये work लिखा था, this is also something you should remember. And when Dadabhai Naoroji exposed it, then other important Indian leaders and leading economists of the day also sort of dwelled into this aspect. उनको भी realize हुआ, yes, Dadabhai Naoroji is right, and they did more sort of analysis of this economic character of the British rule in the country, in which important role was played by G.V. Joshi, Justice Ranade, M.G. Ranade, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, R.C. Datta. In fact, R.C. Datta ने भी बहुत एक important role play किया, even though he was a retired civil servant ICS officer. इन्होंने book लिखी है The Economic History of India. The Economic History of India, 1901 में लिखी है. And in a very fine way, in a very refined manner, in a very analytical manner, he exposed the real nature of the British rule in the country, economic तरीके से, which actually undermined the moral authority of the British rule, as I've said. So all these leaders, they played this very important part, which formed a basis of economic nationalism. इसके basis पे economic nationalism इंडिया में आया इस time पे. You see, the moderates, actually moderates का अपना एक contribution है in exposing the British rule, because you know that later on even the moderates were criticized for their ineffectual means and methods. But the moderate leaders and all these economists, they played a very important role in kind of laying the foundation on which the Indian nationalism could be built. And it was basically the economic nationalism, the economic critique of the British rule in the country, upon which the later leaders, they built this edifice of Indian nationalism. So इनका एक अपना contribution है, and you know what their contribution is, right? Okay, so let's come back to the previous year question that we have discussed in the beginning. I mean, we did not discuss, we'll just discuss right now, but I asked you in the beginning. So this was the question, and can you tell me again what is the right answer? I'm sure that it would be easy for you to answer it correctly now. Shruti had said C is the answer. This is what Shruti said in the beginning. Shruti, what do you think now? What should be the right answer? And those of you who missed out in the beginning, this was the question that I had asked in the beginning. So you can attempt this question now, and I'm sure that most of you would be in a good position to answer this. Quickly guys, quick. Anu, what do you think? What is the right answer to this? Yes, of course. So A is the correct answer. That's fantastic. Anu, today you are doing very well. Absence of heavy industries. So independent development industries का नहीं हुआ because there was absence of heavy industries. Heavy industries अगर होते इंडिया में, iron steel होता, machinery building होती, तो एक जो फाउंडेशन स्टोन है कंट्री के इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन का वो बिल्ड होता. एंड एज वी हैव जस्ट डिस्कस्ड दैट द ब्रिटिश डिलिबरेटली डिस्करेज्ड द एस्टैब्लिशमेंट ऑफ हेवी इंडस्ट्रीज. इनफैक्ट ये सिर्फ उन्होंने यहाँ पे नहीं किया, अमेरिका में भी किया in the 18th century, which was one of the reasons why the American War of Independence took place. The American colonialists were unhappy. Consciously वो heavy industries को discourage करते थे. So this is the right answer. Then we have other options is scarcity of foreign capital. Foreign capital की कोई कमी नहीं थी because the British industrialists were very keen to invest their surplus capital in India. तो था surplus जो capital आ रहा था वो ज़्यादातर foreign से ही था. So there was no scarcity. Neither there was scarcity of in natural resources in the country. India has already been a very blessed country in terms of natural resources. We have almost all the natural resources that any country could have. And preference of the rich to invest in land, this does not make any sense because जो ऐसा कोई फिनोमिनन हमको देखने को नहीं मिला जिसकी वजह से हमारा कोई इंडिपेंडेंट डेवलपमेंट इंडस्ट्रीज का नहीं हो पाया. इट इज नॉट बिकॉज ऑफ द रिच, इट इज बिकॉज ऑफ द ब्रिटिश which who actively discouraged the establishment of heavy industries. Heavy industries होता तो बाकी चीजों में वो cascading impact दिखता. And in India, just like England, would also have gradually turned into this manufacturing powerhouse, which did not happen. Okay, let's come to the next question. I'm sure that this will be easy for you. What is the right answer to this? Who among the following leaders did not believe in the drain theory of Dadabhai Nauroji? अभी हमने बात की थी इस चीज की. थैंक यू अनु, थैंक यू सो मच. इफ यू थिंक सो, आई एम ग्लैड. इसका आंसर बताइए. हु अमंग द फॉलोइंग लीडर्स डिड नॉट बिलीव इन ड्रेन थियरी, जो ड्रेन ऑफ वेल्थ थियरी हमने पढ़ा, इनमें से कौन से वो लीडर हैं जो बिलीव नहीं करते थे इस चीज में? एंड आई एम श्योर दिस इज वेरी इजी. Yes, indeed, of course, you got it right once again. This is D, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, because we have just talked about the contribution of Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Ranade was there and Bal Gangadhar Tilak was also there. So he was also this believer in the drain of wealth theory. Then we have R.C. Datta, we have M.G. Ranade from Maharashtra. And Sir Syed Ahmad Khan is the exception because Sir Syed Ahmad Khan preached loyalty to the British, and he said the British are here in India for India's good, and he continued to be a champion of the British rule in the country, and as such he did not believe that it was harming the country and this drain of wealth was taking place from the country. So Syed Ahmad Khan is the right answer. And you also know that towards the end of his life he also began to talk about separatism. He began to talk about Hindu domination and all those sorts of things. So that is indeed the right answer. Guys, in the end I have some announcement for you. If you have any question you can ask me, otherwise just a quick announcement. We have this subscription plan for UPSC, CSE and other UPSC exams like EPFO, in which you will get 11 plus structured live courses, 60 plus mock tests, and जो subscription plan है they can vary depending upon your requirements. 24 months, 12 months, 6 months. Then we have UPSC CSE 2021 के लिए we have all these things for you: daily current affairs, daily editorial analysis, NCERT, NIOS IGNU quiz, weekly PIB analysis, Gradeup Super quiz. So you can see all these things you will get in the subscription plan. As for the ongoing courses, so we have these many ongoing courses right now that have already started with regard to the subscription plan, and you also get access to a lot of these upcoming courses as well that have not yet started. ये सारे जो courses हैं at no additional cost, just one time cost will be there, that in the form of subscription plan, and you can have access to all these fantastic courses. Also we have free series on Gradeup app in which you get this IS 2021 का, then UPSC CSE Prelims 2020 subject wise detailed analysis and solutions, and all these other features also that are there. So this was all for the day. Thank you so much guys. If you have any question you can ask me, otherwise we'll wrap up the session. I'm fantastic Shivam, but you are a bit late in the class. By the way, I do have another class in a short while that will be on Gradeup app. You can join it if you wish, and I will see you there. All right, so guys, thank you so much, and have a good day indeed. I'll see you again. Bye bye everybody, take care. Bye bye Shruti, Shivam, Anu, have a good day. Bye bye, take care.